Digimon Ghost Game Episode 3 introduced a creepy prankster enemy and a big fluffy boy I have no choice but to fall in love with. So let's break down 10 things you might have missed in Digimon Ghost Game Episode 3, Scribbles.
It's come, Spooktober Spectacular 2!
Some nice friends you got there, YouTube. Welcome back everybody to Karn Spooktober Spectacular. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. And damn, it feels good to have a new episode of Digimon Ghost Game after we missed a week last week due to Japanese elections. But they are back at it with one of the scariest episodes to date and one of the most fascinating. There was car crashes, girls with long hair, Angoramon, and a seemingly recurring Dracumon. As always, of course, this is just 10 things I noticed. I could do 20 or maybe even 30 for some episodes. I just picked the 10 I found the most interesting, but if you've got a detail of your own, let me know in the comments down below and you might get featured on the next video. And be warned, full spoilers for this episode, the two prior to it, and potentially the future of Ghost Game if any of my theories are correct. And let's start with number 10. The first missable detail is in Ruri's friend's phone case. It's a cool, funky shark shouting "same," which may tie into the fact that Japanese youth culture and kind of Japan in general likes to use a lot of loan words from English because it's seen as quite trendy. And in American and British culture, saying "same" to mean like "me too" or "I agree." So I think the shark is shouting "same" in a kind of cool English loan word way, but also "same" is the Japanese word for shark, and it is spelled the exact same way as the word same. Likely has no bearing on the plot, but something I found very interesting, the same Same connection, but a missable detail nonetheless. And speaking of those friends, while they have been in past episode, this is Ruri's episode, so I wanted to focus on their common naming convention. Ruri is likely a similar or parallel name to Ruri, which would mean her name comes from lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli is a strong royal blue coloured metamorphic rock, and the blue colour is very important because Ruri's friends Aoi and Mika also likely get their names from blue. Aoi comes from Ao, which is the Japanese word for blue, and Mika can be interpreted in many ways depending on the kanji it's written in, but almost all interpretations of the name in Japanese include ocean. Mika is admittedly the weakest connection to blue here. I believe Japanese experts, please do correct me in the comments down below if I'm wrong, but it's still clearly intentional and contributes to this show's seeming obsession with the RGB and CMYK color models. Our next missable detail is Ruri's piano, which it later transpires Angoramon is absolutely in love with, and is part of the reason why he chose to protect her. I couldn't identify the tune that she was playing in that scene, but do let me know. But also of note is that the piano is actually an electric piano, or keyboard, because you can see a cord trailing into an extension cable in a couple of shots of her room. The piano is also called a Yamakawa, which is not a real-world brand, but very clearly comes from the two most popular Japanese brand of piano, Yamaha and Kawai. I thought that was fun. I always love when anime does like legally distinct things like McDonald's in Anohana. And then moving on to the cheeky scamp of this episode, Dracumon, who is causing troubles in social media with his scribbles. This may seem kind of random that he's doing scribbles because he's just presented as a sort of internet vampire in this episode, but his scribbles actually come straight from the Digimon reference book, which states, "The dark area's most mischievous Digimon. For the sake of a prank, it will meet the challenge unflinchingly, even if it is accompanied by some risk. It once nearly got itself killed trying to graffiti the faces of all four of the four holy beasts. It's unknown whether it succeeded." This graffiti addiction can even be seen in its card in the Digimon card game. A small detail and possibly an accidental connection is when Angoramon demonstrates why he prefers not to materialize. He shows he can go into Ruri's phone in this state to check on Dracumon and other threats in the internet and the general network. This idea of a Digimon residing in its tamer's phone features prominently in the mobile game Digimon Ruri, where the protagonist's phones essentially act as their digivices. It may not be an intentional reference, but at worst it's something a little bit fun, and at best it's a nice nod or reference to another part of the Digimon franchise. This isn't solely a detail from this episode, but I'll be honest, there were a lot less missable details this episode, and I think the idea was cemented this episode, but that is that when Hiro goes back to his dorm to get Ruri/Angoramon's Digivice V, he bumps into Kiyoshiro, who asks him if the Digivice V will help ward off evil, and he remarks that even his talismans aren't working anymore. Not that they would anyway, because apparently most of them aren't for ghost warding, they're for things like pregnancy and stuff. I and many others have interpreted this to be much like how Angoramon watches over and attempts to protect Ruri. I think that Jellymon, much like its character bio says, is trying to scare and prank Kiyoshiro, but right now, because it can't be seen by him or anyone else without a Digivice V, it's basically acting like a poltergeist, throwing things around his room and generally unsettling him. This also leads to more questions as to how hologram ghosts are able to manifest and to what level. We see Digimon like Clockmon and Mummymon able to interact with humans and objects, but then Angoramon can only physically interact with other Digimon, including the materialized Gammamon, and Dracumon can only use his powers to influence humans but cannot physically apprehend them. Something to bear in mind for the future. Speaking of something I suspected in prior episodes but needed this episode to confirm it, and that is that it seems that the tamers in this season beam attack commands through their Digivice V to their partner Digimon, and this is a callback to Digimon V-Tamer, which the character artist for this season, Tenya Yabano, also did art and character designs for, because in Digimon V-Tamer, Taichi would use his Digivice 01 to beam attacks to his partner Zeromaru. The Digivice 01 even had like a little antenna for this purpose, and it's not something we've seen a ton of in other Digimon seasons. Usually the Digimon just kind of innately know their attacks, but it almost feels like in this season the tamers are given the attacks and then use the Digivice V to relay that attack concept to their partner. It's a really fascinating idea and a lovely callback to V-Tamer. And when Ruri does slap on that Digivice V and insert her Angoramon dim, which by the way takes way less time than it does in real life, loading dims can be a really slow process IRL. We see that she has the third wallpaper available on the real life Digivice V, rather than the first wallpaper, the default blue. And because of that, I'm also willing to bet that Kiyoshiro probably has the second green wallpaper whenever he eventually gets Jellymon. But also of note is that Angoramon's symbol appears once loaded, just like it would on the real V, and just like Gammamon's did in this season. We know this symbol is uniquely Angoramon's because of the Digivice V debut promotional video, which showed the Gammamon, Angoramon, and Jellymon symbols. Angoramon's symbol forms an A and is basically a reconfiguration of Gammamon's V symbol. Jellymon gets left out with her own circular symbol, but I wonder if the three connect in some way, much like the Valknut on the Digivice V. Still hoping some form of my Trifusion idea comes to pass, I guess. Our penultimate missable detail for this video is seeming confirmation that either materialization, the sinking of the tamer in Digimon's heart through the Digivice V, or a combination of both does lead to a power increase to Digimon. I'm not a power scaler, I don't really care about these kind of things, but it is interesting that unmaterialized Angoramon simply could not catch up with Dracumon, but once he was materialized and kind of bonded with Ruri's heart, he remarked that he felt more powerful and he was able to catch up with Dracumon. This presents a lot of questions because again, if it is just the bond of a tamer and a Digimon, that's fine, that's fairly standard, but if simply the act of materialization makes a Digimon stronger, this might be why a lot of Digimon aren't being outright killed, because they might get to come back later, fully materialized through whatever plot device is used, meaning that it's almost like a stage 2 for every Digimon. A materialized Dracmon, Mummymon, Clockmon, wherever it may be stronger than their hologram ghost form. Just a theory, but something that I'm picking up on now. We'll see if it comes true. And that's especially interesting because our final missable detail is that Dracumon will return, and I mean duh, right? Another Digimon of the week they didn't outright murder before trying to reason with them. Certain other seasons should be taking note, I'm just saying. Hashtag no shade. But I find it very interesting that unlike Mummymon, Dracumon was let go and is far from done causing trouble, because earlier in the episode when he was trying to materialize, and Hiro tells him he won't do it, Dracumon remarks there are lots of bad people in the human world who would help him with his goal. This may mean nothing, but I also think it may lead to some kind of like 6th Ranger kid, a 4th kid to go alongside our trio. Also potentially like a Yamaki or Hypnos type thing. We do have the corporation that was shown in the holograms in the first episode. Maybe they'll come in as a kind of evil institution that materializes Dark Digimon. I still really hope for like a 6th Ranger kid who maybe has a Pulsemon, but also has the ability to use lots of dim cards, because why are they locked to one dim card? Like, every Digivice V can hold at least 2, so everyone should at least get 2. I get partners are an important thing in Digimon, don't get me wrong. Although a lot of the video games let you have more than one partner, so who knows. But a 6th Ranger kind of Tommy Oliver kid who initially does Dark Digivolution and then maybe gets redeemed and helps them, or some kind of like evil corporation using a dark version of the Digivice V or the technology it contains to materialize all these hologram ghosts and set them loose on the world. Either way, I think there is a very clear reason why these Digimon of the Week are not being murdered, but Toei does have this kind of like obsession recently with using Dracumon as a partner. It was a partner in Cross Wars, it's going to be a partner in Digimon Survive if that game ever stops being delayed, so maybe we could see Dracumon as a partner to someone bad in this season? I don't know. Well, there it is, 10 things you might have missed in Digimon Ghost Game Episode 3, along with some theories for the future to boot. As always, let me know in the comments down below any details you noticed to potentially be featured in the next video, just like the Goblin, who said a detail I thought was pretty interesting is that when Mummymon emerges from the museum, at first he can't pass through the exhibit glass like it's a solid object. He then closes his eyes and passes through with no problem. This not only implies that Digimon can control their tangibility in the human world, but perhaps their visibility as well, explaining Clockmon's line of "you can see me." It's certainly an interesting point and something I didn't notice in episode 2 really, but yes, it does seem that materialization, or at least the ability to interact with the human world, is somewhat in a Digimon's wheelhouse, and that focus, strength and power enhance their ability to kind of cross over, which might explain why more powerful Digimon of higher level like Clockmon and Mummymon can kind of interact more, whereas Dracumon is very much stuck in the internet. But I still think materialization is a step that will require more than just will, but I guess we'll see. Next is Jackie Chung, who says, "Nice list. In regards to add-on when it takes place, there is a blink or miss it scene in regards to the time and day, with the scene of Hiro giving a request of leaving the campus to the dorm clerk. The slip takes notice of the date, which is October 10th, and the excursion will take place from 11:15 AM to 11 PM, as well as noticing that Hiro will skip school, lunch and dinner." So yeah, I got really obsessed with the whole magazine idea last time, confirming that the show takes place in September or October, and I missed the fact that the slip confirmed that the episode takes place on October 10th, which was the air date. Couldn't seem to find any dates in this episode, but I don't think it will have been 2 weeks in showtime, but I guess we'll find out. And loads of people also noticed, but I'm going to give credit to @Alexandre Carcab on Twitter, who points out that Hiro's dad is missing the sleeve of his shirt or coat in every depiction we see of him, and that is because most likely his shirt sleeve is being used as a bandana by Gammamon. Super cute detail, I really do love that. Loads of people noticed that one, thank you so much. Huge shout out to my Sovereigns, Night 12 and Dogukan, you guys are absolutely phenomenal. Full credits to every channel member in the next video. Want to wrap this one up quickly, and I will see you next time when we go digital.